Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show, July 31st. John, you know why that's important to know?
I have no idea why, Brad.
We're a third of the way through third quarter. How about that?
Wow, what a great way to put it, Brad.
Third of the way through third quarter, the end of July. Tomorrow is August 1st. And that is John Combest. You just heard his melodious tones emanate from the powerhouse that is KSLQ. Yes, we broadcast this show live Monday through Friday, 7 to 8 o'clock Central Time on 104.5. It is an actual radio show, and then we chop it up and put it on bjshow.co, bjshow.us. And what's the other site we now put it on, John?
bjshow.us, right?
No, I gave that one. The new domain name. Come on now. Come
on. acoustictorture.com.
acoustictorture.com, because it truly is acoustic torture. Okay, John, lots of good stuff to talk about today. This is John Combest, Combest. Spell his name because you need to get it correctly when you type it into your computer to pull up his website, johncombest.com, and John, johncombest.com. John, I'm going to foreshadow something which has gotten to be interesting because, you know, there are very few things that I can consider myself an authority on. And it's interesting because on Facebook, my authoritative knowledge was asked about. And I think we need to talk about this in the C block. And it's interesting because this will, to a certain extent, touch on one of your friends.
Oh, wow. Does this have to do with the naming of Lambert Airport landing strips?
No. This has to do...
Oh, does this have to do with what I named an ex-girlfriend's landing strip?
No, this has to do with your friend. I guess he's still a friend. Rod Jetton. You still friends with Rod?
Oh, absolutely. For sure.
This has to do with Rod Jetton. And which is
excellent. I can't wait to hear it. And that's in C block for July 31st for those listening in the future.
Yes, C block. And it involves, I'll give you a little hint, the village of Three Creeks, which is...
Oh, this is one of your favorite stories, Brad. But unlike most of your stories, you haven't told us over and over again. You have told it on the air, but it's been a while since you've told the story.
Because it came up on Facebook that I am the authority on this. And unfortunately, I am. And it's an interesting story about a city that most people don't know exists. And the people who have incorporated the city as the village try to keep it a secret, and to the point where I'll just give you one little interesting nugget of information. The city hall is in a farmer's living room of his house. Okay, are you ready for that, John? So
I can't wait.
So how many city halls are in the living room of a farmer's house? John, can you know the Missouri well? How many cities would you say have their city hall in the living room of a farmer's house? John, how many cities would you say that would be in Missouri? Except for Three Creeks.
0.0.
Exactly. Okay. As I mentioned, that's the aforementioned John Combest. What we do is we start to show off an A block, which we're in right now, with this guy. Your name, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And we count down John's top three, and we start with...
In third place.
Brad, you just mentioned quirky cities. You know, there's a stratosphere of cities. It kind of goes third tier, second tier, first tier. How would you feel, Brad, if someone called you a second tier person? Maybe if they called you a second tier radio owner.
Well, I would say that a compliment because some people accuse me of being a third-tier radio owner. So
a radio station owner. If they called you second tier, you might think, well, it's better than third tier.
Right.
Brad, I know somebody that's probably not happy about being called a second tier anything, and that's Senator Josh Hawley. As a follow-up to our top three yesterday in A Block, we talked about Josh Hawley's Pelosi Act, which would keep elected officials from trading stock when they were in office, themselves or their spouses from trading stock. Donald Trump's none too happy about it. And he took to Truth Social yesterday to blast our own senior senator, Josh Hawley. I'll get to the money line, Brad. At the end, of his post on Truth Social. I guess you can't call it a tweet. Donald Trump says, I don't think real Republicans want to see their president, who has had unprecedented success, targeted because of the whims of a second-tier senator named Josh Hawley. I got to ask, Brad, even though we foreshadowed this a bit yesterday when I said that the White House had provided allegedly pushback against Josh Hawley, did you see an attack on Josh Hawley coming from Donald Trump? Because I didn't, Brad.
I did. Yeah, because you know why?
Why is that?
Donald Trump is never in skinny jeans and pirate shoes. He's always in a suit. So, of course, Donald Trump's going to look down on him because he wears skinny jeans and pirate shoes.
And that would put him at odds with Josh Hawley, who you once saw 7 years ago wearing jeans you didn't like and pirate shoes, right, Brad?
I didn't say I didn't like. I just said it was
You just said that you observed him wearing that. Yeah, so I guess, I think Republican elected officials, whether you're Josh Hawley or whether you're anyone from any state that's an elected Republican, you do this dance where you stand for what you believe in, or I guess you should say you stand for what you think is popular in your home state. And then you have that and you juxtapose that versus not getting crossways with the president. And maybe it's just a matter of time before every elected official that's a Republican has some sort of conflict with the president and the president calls them out. And for his part, Josh Hawley responded with particulars of his proposal. He underscored the fact that this stock trading proposal in its current form would apply to the executive branch, but not until the next executive's first term begins. In other words, it wouldn't apply to President Trump. And Josh Hawley even said that he had, quote, love, unquote, for the president. So to me, Brad, Josh Hawley is handling this about as well as he can. For people who are loyal Trump people, no matter what Trump says, Hawley hasn't done anything to offend them. He still says that he has love for the president, but he appears to be standing by his Pelosi proposal. And I think this is the best that Josh Hawley can do. I mean, you can't just kowtow to the president and think that that'll get you his eternal graces. I mean, sometimes you just have to stand for what you think is right and let the president be mad at you.
John, a technical thing here. It happened one time again. I don't know if this from time to time, but it sounded like your headset, it sounded like you had your hand over your headset for a little part of that last section. So I don't know if that was the case or not, but you got sort of muted. It just sounded sort of weird. It sounded like you put your head underneath the blanket or something like that for a minute.
Okay, I did not put my head underneath the blanket, but if there is an audio issue, Brad, maybe when we go into B block, I could reconfigure. I have a setting here that I could reconfigure. No. Are you hearing me okay now?
Yeah,
we can cut this out.
It sounds fine now. And you came across, but it was just a little bit muted. I'm just saying because, the interesting thing is we all know the A block is like the altar which the politicians prey upon for our show because of the fact that that's the one everybody goes to. So I want to make it sure it's perfect. You know what I'm saying?
That's fantastic, Brad. I appreciate that.
Okay, ready for number 2?
I sure am.
Up a notch to number 2.
Headline from the Jefferson City News Tribune. Nearly 200,000 people removed from Missouri voter rolls. This comes to us from Secretary of State Denny Hoskins. Denny also put out a press release. As you know, Brad, I don't link to press releases on my website. So if you're an elected official or a staff member, don't send them to me. I'm not going to read them. I won't even open them. And I certainly won't link to them. But I went out and I sought Denny Hoskins' press release. Denny says, quote, free and fair elections begin with clean voter rolls. That's why Missouri conducts regular, extensive voter registration list maintenance. And we're strengthening those efforts with powerful new tools and partnerships. So here's the data, Brad. Here's the crux of the thing. In 2025, Missouri's local election authorities removed more than 195,000 outdated or ineligible voter registrations. These removals include over 4,000 individuals with felony convictions and over, wait for it, Brad, 43,000 confirmed deceased registrations. Denny's release notes, please note, List maintenance is ongoing. So, Brad, it's fair to say that in the November 2024 elections, 43,000 people were confirmed as being registered to vote. Now, that doesn't mean they registered to vote. In fact, they clearly didn't vote. But why, until Denny Hoskins took over, why were 43,000 dead people on the voter rolls, Brad?
John, this is an interesting topic because of the fact that anytime you mention, you hear that there's a purge of certain names on the voter list in any state, it seems like the certain political action committees go ape, you know what? And to the point where I find this interesting because anybody who maintains an email list, and I do that for a couple of different things that I do, you know that even if you do your best to keep that, checked out and make sure everybody's still current, when you do like an email blast, you'll typically have like 1 or 2% of bounce backs, which the email address is no longer valid, and you have to go and maintain it. It's the same thing with voter rolls. I mean, like you talked about, people die, they get thrown in jail, felons aren't allowed to, vote and things like that. Why is it that everybody goes crazy over this? Because he's just doing his job, right? Isn't that what he's supposed to be doing?
Well, yes, but I also think we don't think that of those 43,000 people, we don't think that 43,000 people died last year, or do we? I mean, if you accept that every single one of those people just died between August and January, then I guess you would say that is a fair number. Now, I don't think, Brad, my assumption is that Jay Ashcroft did a good job at the nuts and bolts of doing the Secretary of State's job. That's why I ask rhetorically, Brad, how in the world were 43,000 dead people on these local voter rolls in January that have since been removed?
You're saying that Jay didn't do his job?
That's exactly what I did not say, Brad. I think I just said, if you play it back, that Jay Ashcroft did a good job with the nuts and bolts of his job as Secretary of State. So, again, I asked, Brad, why were that many people, dead people, still on voter rolls in these counties?
According to NCH statistics, 8,990 people in the United States die each day. So if you would multiply that times, let's do the math on that. See if you
that's not Missouri, right?
Well, but
and with 5 minutes left, that's a great piece of math to do during break, Brad. With 5 minutes left in the segment.
If you did multiply that times 31 days, that would be 278,000 each month. And you multiply that times 12, that would be 3.3 million. And if you divide that by 50, that would be 66,000 a year. So 60.
Wow, that's amazing, Brad. And you know what? We can also parse that math a little bit. We only have 4 minutes left for our main story. So why don't we get into story number one?
I think John wants me to hit this button, right, John?
The number one.
Getting excited, indicted, spent the grip, and a year trying to fight it. That lyric from 1993's Lethal Injection was by a man named O'Shea Jackson, better known to people like Brad as Ice Cube. It could also apply to St. Louis County Executive Sam Page. And a follow-up from yesterday's B Block, brought to us by Brad Hildebrand, a headline from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Sam Page stole county money to campaign against Prop B, charges say. Now, Brad, as you know, I don't link to stories about county government. I only link to stories that involve county government if it involves state officials. And in this case, Attorney General Andrew Bailey was at the center of this case. Again, you and I discussed this yesterday in your B Block on July 30th yesterday, Brad. Here's the lead from the Post-Dispatch. St. Louis County exec Sam Page was charged Wednesday with stealing thousands of dollars when he used county funds to campaign against a ballot proposition in April. Page spent more than $25,000 to create flyers and mail them to more than 50,000 registered voters, investigators wrote in court documents. He ignored a county attorney's advice in creating the flyers and avoided the county's bidding process, which ended up costing taxpayers even more money. So, Brad, as a follow-up to yesterday, we talked about if anything would actually happen here. I've been skeptical the whole time that anything would really come of this. And boy, was I wrong. An indictment is pretty serious stuff. So this piece goes on, and there's several pieces up today, Brad. But I would point people to the Post-Dispatch one, because this piece from Kelsey Landis and Dana Reek is pretty thorough. Rachel Lippman of St. Louis Public Radio also has a piece up. Mark Maxwell covered it as well. Anyway, it looks really serious for Sam Page, Brad. And an indictment, when you read a headline that shows that there's an indictment, it means there's something there. It means that we go beyond just rumors and complaints that Bailey isn't investigating. And it shows that something must be there if you get an indictment.
John, this is an interesting juxtaposition from yesterday to today. You know why?
Why is that?
Yesterday, you said you don't do this kind of story because you just mentioned that. And I did. And today you did the story and I don't. How's that?
Hey, there you go. That's the way it goes, Brad. But this is serious stuff.
Well, it's interesting. First off, I'm going to say something, and please don't get the wrong idea about what I'm saying. I've said this before. I want all my radio brethren, and if that's brothers and sisters inclusive, I want them to all do well. I really do. And Mark Reardon has not been on the air for, I guess, like 5 weeks now. I have his cell phone number. I text him from time to time. All I can say is think some positive thoughts for Mark Reardon. If you are a person that is of religious persuasion, pray for Mark Reardon, okay? Having said that, he's got a cavalcade of people filling in for him yesterday. Yesterday was the guy from Buffalo, New York. I don't know his name, Joe something or other. And he had Dennis Hancock on. And you know who Dennis Hancock is, right?
He's a member of the St. Louis County Council.
Right. And the interesting thing was Dennis Hancock came out and said, we told him not to do this. And like you just said, that the attorney told him not to do it, and he violated explain to me why he was so incredibly just focused on doing this. And not only that, it's to the point where, like, how many people are in St. Louis County, approximately, John? How many people?
I don't know off the top of my head.
It's about 1 million people, okay? Approximately 1 million people in St. Louis County. He mailed to what, 55,000 people?
Yeah, a small number. But you can assume that they were. So I have the flyer in my hands, Brad. And I got the flyer because I don't miss an election. Like, I vote in every election.
So what they did was they culled the voting records of the people who were showing up for every election, correct?
Maybe. I mean, we don't. So I think that's going to be one of the things that comes out here, Brad. You could also, perhaps they looked at different areas and said, okay, in this area, we would expect, like, we'll get the most bang for our buck if we target folks that we think are identified as one orientation or another. We don't know. We don't know how that was limited.
Was he so afraid of the fact, because let's talk about the basis of this thing. Essentially, the Proposition B was an amendment, was it to the St. Louis County Charter, I believe that was
Correct,
that what it was?
Yep.
It was amendment to the St. Louis County Charter where essentially the county council could get rid of people who were employed by the county by a 5-7 vote or something like that. Wasn't that the deal? Like,
correct, yep.
And essentially that would include him as well too. Wasn't that the deal, that if they could essentially vote out the county executive, wasn't that part of the deal?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Brad. And the frustrating thing, I think, about it is that Proposition B failed by a huge margin. Like, it wasn't even close. And Sam Page didn't need to do this. So why would you do this?
It goes back to the Richard Nixon, the Watergate thing, when similar situation where the polls showed Richard Nixon way out in front, but yet they resorted to, back then it was dirty tricks, the Watergate plumbers, whatever they called themselves. If you know the whole story, where they broke into the DNC headquarters in the Watergate Hotel, or whatever it was. Do you see the parallel with that, John? That they didn't.
I do, and so I mean, I think that's a good parallel because Nixon didn't need that to beat George McGovern because he was going to win anyway. I just think that if I'm Sam and I look back at this, what I'm frustrated by is that I had people tell me that it was a bad idea and I didn't need to do it. And somebody came to me, or people came to me and said, no, let's do it anyway. So why are you surrounding yourself with people who clearly have bad judgment?
Well, he's got sort of that rep. Well, who is the guy he hired as his number one man who was having sex in the office next to his? With the video surfaced of that.
There was a gentleman named Calvin Harris who has since resigned and gone on to do some other things. Who was, at the center of a video, which he did not consent. This gentleman did not consent to have it released, and it was a private moment in an office. Yeah, but I get your point, Brad.
Calvin Harris, he's also a big top 40. He's a record producer as well, too. I believe.
I think his name is Calvin Harris. I could be wrong about that. But let's get back to the bigger point, Brad. Like, if you're Sam Page, at a certain point, you ultimately have to take responsibility for it. But people in that office can say that they told him that it wasn't a good idea. Like this, his attorney, Jennifer Baumann, on the county side, clearly the document show said that he needed to remove some of this so that it wasn't so biased. And someone in the office chose not to, and ultimately Sam pays the price for that.
And then him coming out and saying we need to spend, what was it, $1 billion for new county executive office buildings, stuff like that. Come on.
Well, that's mostly because you used to work in that area, Brad, and they needed to exercise those demons.
I worked one block away from it, matter of fact.
I know, and you were so bad that they turned the place into a jail.
Yes, where I used to work is now the county jail. And I've told the story before. There are some guys I used to work with at that address who are still at that address. But they're taking on a different role at that address. Okay, John, I've got as John would say, a banger of a top 3 coming up.
I can't wait. And I want us to start off with the jingle at D-Block, Brad.
And John, I'm going to come up with something that you are no longer going to make fun of my Mustang P51 things, okay?
Oh, I can't wait. It's another arcane reference that 1% of the audience will care about.
Yes, and it will be
I can't wait.
It will be the new thing. From now on, John will say, and Brad's going to talk about the P51 Mustang and blah, 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 and he's going to put the second one on there. Okay, you ready?
I can't wait.